Good morning. Companies are getting ever more cunning in getting around whatever high tariffs or fees get thrown in the way. This report is more complicated than usual, and it's longer than usual, so we're breaking it up into two reports. It involves global shipping, with a lot of moving parts as higher costs are shifting around. And the only thing we can say for sure is that U.S. consumers are going to pay a lot more for products and wait a lot longer to get them. Starting this month, there are new fees for Chinese-owned ships making port calls in the United States. The objective is to rein in China's dominance in shipbuilding. $50 a ton for Chinese ship operators, $18 per ton for ships that are built in China, and $120 per shipping container brought in on those Chinese ships. 2 points of view are here. That adds up to a lot of money, given how big these ships are and how many containers there are on them. But on the other hand, it is not a lot of money for importers on a per shipment basis. There are a lot of product that can be put into a shipping container, so those fees would pass along to the importers, all the importers, by the shipping companies. But to the shipping company itself, it's over $1 million for each port visit. And of course, they're trying to get around those fees the best they can. That's to say, as an importer, I don't mind paying an extra couple of $100s to get my container over. But for the shipping company that's doing tens of thousands of containers per ship, it's a different calculus. Here then is how the major shipping companies are handling that problem so far. Shipping company partners are working together, jerking around established freight routes. That creates opportunities for shippers calling on non-US ports. COSCO is a massive company out of mainland China and Hong Kong. COSCO was already heavily active in developed markets outside the United States anyway, before these new fees were announced. In the first 6 months, their shipments were up over 9% here in China, up over 5% in Asia, up 11.9% to Africa and South America and elsewhere. COSCO is also a huge manager of 39 ports across the world, and their revenues and profits are also booming, up 7.8% and 4%. COSCO's port operations are a crucial component of this issue, and we'll come back to it in part 2. COSCO itself is looking at a $2 billion hit to their bottom line next year after these tariffs go on, and the fees are scheduled to move higher in future years. So they and other ship operators are making big changes to their business operations. Orient Overseas is a COSCO subsidiary. It admits that the new port fees will have a large impact on them and their partners. As they and other companies shift global trade patterns to get away from these high fees, shipments to the United States will be slowed down and supply chains restructured. Changes are already well underway as companies from countries elsewhere are coordinating shipments closely. And we see a sizable reduction in Chinese-built ships making U.S. port visits. This is the strategy then. The Chinese build more than half of all the ships in the world, but that's today. There are lots of ships on the ocean that were not built by Chinese companies, and a lot of other ships that are not owned by Chinese vessel operators. So companies are getting savvy at breaking up their fleets to serve only the American market. Premier Alliance is comprised of 3 companies from South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. And so the problem for them, obviously, is that they've got a bunch of ships, 10, built in mainland China that are subject to the high port fees. So those particular ships will move to serve other markets. We should assume that Premier Alliance was using those Chinese ships for U.S. ports on the West Coast because it was most efficient to do it that way, more economical and faster. We should also assume then that this new supply chain will be less economical and less fast, less stable, for buyers of imported goods heading to the United States. Capacity shortages are likely, especially during the busiest times. There's no getting around the higher cost problem for American consumers, which will be $30 billion a year. So that $30 billion works out to hundreds of millions of dollars for each of these shipping companies, but it works out to only $120 a year for each American. So if all this seems like a lot of trouble, given that they can just pass along these costs to importers and keep almost everything the same, there are two problems. In 6 months, April 26, fees are going a lot higher across the board. Then again the following April, then again in 2028. So this is just the beginning, and shippers need to lock down different berthing and docking schedules at some point, and it's a race to get that done before everyone else already has. The second problem is here. It's over $1 million for each port visit because ships make several visits at several ports and will be hit with these fees every time. So the major shipping companies are already moving to reduce their own costs best they can. And it's naturally very complex across the entire global industry. Shipping companies will demand higher rates from partner shipping lines, and every shipment itself is further complicated by the cargo configurations on each ship. Sharing vessels and port visits and splitting the costs is just very complicated. But it's a multi-billion-dollar cost problem, a math problem that these companies are trying to solve for themselves first and then for their partners. But there is no way out for U.S. importers, who will pay the vast majority of all these new costs. They will pass on many of the costs to their customers via higher retail pricing, or try to push their own vendors harder, or adjusting their supply chains. That means higher prices and longer wait times. These are the Jiaohe ancient ruins. They're in Xinjiang province. Be good.
Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. Everyone who hears these words of Jesus and acts on them is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and yet the house did not fall, for it was founded on a rock.